Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's 5:30. I'm calling to order March 23rd, 2026 regular meeting, a workshop of the Clover Park School District Board of Directors. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. We will move to reports from the superintendent, but first, board, please note the elementary English language arts curriculum adoption presentation is meant to be a written report only. There is no presentation. And if you have any questions concerning the written report, you may address those questions to Dr. Raymond. With that, Superintendent Manner.
Thank you. The district has several reports for you tonight. We will attempt to be brief, be brilliant, and be gone. The first of the reports is the naming submission by citizens with regard to the Clover Park tennis courts. Recently, we did receive a request to name the tennis courts after a long time coach who has been deceased. This is the second request, I believe. One came in about a year and a half ago. And so what the district is looking for this evening is just a consensus from the board to either not move forward or to move forward. And if we get the move forward, then we will begin the naming as per policy, the naming process as per policy. So I leave it up to you for discussion. If you have any questions, myself and or Executive Director Albrecht can attend to them. And once we get kind of a thumbs up from you, if we get that, then we will move forward. So it's not an official vote. It is a consensus for the district to move forward.
Does any member of the board have any questions for?
Are there pros and cons to naming a facility after a former coach?
The most recent facility was the Merle Hagbo baseball field. Prior to that, we had Mel Ninnis basketball court at the gym over here. I don't see a lot of cons unless, a lot of time hasn't passed, and typically we try to get some time to have passed in order to ensure that something doesn't come up that might not be flattering. I think there's a lot of greatness, the possibility of the community involvement, the community attachment. I think that's a good thing. So that's a huge pro. And so, yeah, I don't see a lot of cons. If I was going to make a recommendation, I would say I would recommend that we move forward and go through the process, and the process takes us through the end point where there's a recommendation, and then the board gets to ask questions, make a determination, go into discussion, do a vote, and determine if that's the direction you want to go. So I don't see a lot of cons, and I think that in a community such as ours, I think it can do the only thing it can really do is strengthen our community, get people to buy into the community more. And this is a longtime coach, and there's a lot of community that have engaged with this person, whether it be directly from coaching or just understanding the positives that the person has imparted on the youth.
Like you mentioned that this is like a consensus to move forward with the process, but how does that work?
Yeah, so our marketing and communications department, community relations department, will engage stakeholders, and they'll come forward with, these are the reasons, and you have to be prepared because somebody might come forward with this is a reason not to do that. So if there is a con, going back to the previous question, sometimes you could get into some of the push and pull on the yeses and the nos. So I don't know, Leanna, can you talk a little bit more about the length of the process? So we'll go through stakeholder conversation, recommendations. Why would we do this? Why wouldn't we do this? Here are the recommended names. and then move forward to bringing that information back to the board? I'm certain I'm missing something.
The only thing that's exactly it is we assemble a committee that is representative of district stakeholders and community. So we bring that committee together and do exactly what Superintendent Banner mentioned is we gather input. And then we have a process that we go through for considering all of the input that we've received, all the background information that we have on the individual. And then they go through that and make a decision, and they get that recommendation to the superintendent to bring forward to the board.
And again, going back to the pros and cons, if there's another pro, it's bringing the community together to have a conversation about something that matters to them. Regardless of the outcome, we're creating a space for conversation to happen.
So it says procedure 6970-P1, naming facilities, teams, and other use of mascots, images, logos. It says that the form a committee and then recommend not less than 3 and not more than 5 names for the facility. Would we still do that step when we have a name that's already kind of top of the list?
Because this is a specific request, it would be different if we were, let's say, for example, when Clover Park High School went through the process of identifying a mascot name, it was not a specific name we were considering. It was a broader community input session to identify potential mascot names or names of schools. So that this would be a little bit different than what you're identifying there.
But if you want, we can do that name, and then it could be like Darren Lowry and then Ron Banner. We can get to 3 if you want.
Well, I think for me, we should move forward at least with the process and see what the outcome is. If
I agree.
Okay, so if we could, just for our sake, see either a thumbs up, down, or sideways, and I think then, okay, I think we'll move forward with the process. Thank you. Next, we will have our Director of College Career Readiness and CTE, Dr. Demetria Hodges, to come and speak to us about the potential for the Maritime 253 Skills Center, which is would be a partnership with the Tacoma School District or an interlocal with the Tacoma School District. Dr. Hodges, the floor is yours.
Board of Directors, again, I'm Demetria Hodges, the Director of CTE and CCR. This evening, I'm going to provide you with information regarding a new partnership opportunity. The Maritime South Sound Skills Center, also known as Maritime 235, is a new regional career and technical education center being developed through a partnership between Port of Tacoma and Tacoma Public Schools. It will open in September 2026. The center will serve grades 11 through 12 students across Pierce County who are interested in maritime related careers. The center is designed to respond to workforce demand in a rapidly growing maritime industry driven by technology, innovation, and sustainability. The Skills Center is located at 821 Dock Street in Tacoma. Highlights of this Maritime Skills Center partnership are it offers 2-year programs and 4 career pathways: advanced maritime manufacturing, port operations and logistics, technology, and sustainability. It is a half-day model. Students attend daily during 1 of 2 sessions. Again, grades 11 through 12 students, they will have an opportunity to earn 3 credits per year, earn dual credit, course equivalencies, and industry certifications. The facility will be fully ADA compliant, including dedicated support for students with IEPs and 504 plans. Grab-and-go meal options for breakfast and lunch will be available. And as the district the designated district representative, I will serve on the Maritime Governing Board. There are some responsibilities of Clover Park School District as part of this opportunity, and these include no upfront cost to join, capping enrollment at 20 students for the 26-27 school year, contributing $50 per enrolled student annually to a required maintenance fund, paying a proportional share of the special education liaison salary based on enrolled Clover Park School District students with an IEP and/or 504 plans. Clover Park School District counselors will coordinate with Maritime staff to ensure students remain on track to graduate. And similar to Running Start, students and families will be responsible for transportation. A resolution will be brought to the board at its April 13th meeting for consideration of the inter-district cooperative agreement. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and if I do not have an immediate answer, I will follow up with Superintendent Banner. Thank you.
Director Kim.
Thank you. This is an exciting opportunity for our students. My question is it just $50 that we're paying when the students go, or is it like the money follows the students with Running Start and they get whatever percentage they're enrolled in?
That is correct. So if you're asking about the funding model, that would be
Mhm.
correct. It's very similar to Running Start.
Got it. And then my other question is, I know a lot of port jobs are heavily unionized with apprenticeships and that sort of model for growing into the field. And were the current unions that are active in the Port of Tacoma involved in this?
Yes, they are.
Awesome. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Kelleher.
Excited about this also, and it sounds like it's a new program. Is it associated or similar to the other skill centers that are sponsored by Tacoma Public Schools? They have some where they're down at the port where you can take classes to learn a lot of it, like modules in the summer where you could learn to be a forklift operator and learn to do those different things. Do you know if that's like, are they kind of interwoven or are those separate summer ones?
So that would be separate. This would be an educational skill center, an educational center for students. So again, very similar to Running Start and or Pierce County Skills Center, where students attend for half the day at their home school and then go to the Skills Center the second half of the day.
Like maybe West Sound Tech out at Olympic College has, or out in Bremerton, they have that. So that's maybe more what it sounds like. That's great. I think this sounds really cool. My only other question, it sounds like families and students are responsible for transportation. I'm wondering if there's public transportation from here, like down to that area. I would guess the public bus might run there. That might be helpful for our students.
So yes, students would have an opportunity to transport using Pierce Transit with a free Orca card. And our Director of Transportation, no, not direct, yes, sorry, Mr. Ring, I'm sorry, Executive Director, he will work to support any student who would like to transport themselves via Pierce Transit.
Dr. Hodges, thank you for the information. I guess I kind of have the parent question regarding liability, since our students will be, working around equipment and the water, and what is the liability for us as a district?
So the liability, I'll answer part of the question, but then I'll also follow up with more information and share it with Superintendent Banner. So our students are already in industry standard career and technical education classes here in Clover Park School District. We have our Core Plus Aerospace program, our Core Plus Construction program. So our students are already using industry standard equipment. And very similarly, students will be expected to take the OSHA 10, take and pass the OSHA 10 industry certification before they are allowed to go into the shop and use any types of equipment. And the district or the Skill Center, very similar to what we have. They also have insurance in place. Families are made aware of potential liabilities of being in such a program or learning space. But again, I will provide additional information that maybe I have not shared at this time.
All right.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you so much. Any other questions?
Dr. Hodges, I think this is a great opportunity for students. So this is terrific. The question I have is about governance. So you said that you will serve on a board of some sort. Are there other CTE directors who will also be serving on that board, similar to a skill center?
Yes, so primarily all of the governing board members are directors of CTE. There may be a couple of superintendents and or assistant superintendents that are on the board and or periodically attend a meeting. You're welcome.
Seeing no other questions, thank you, Dr. Hodges. And just to follow up on that last question, I know when to not be in that space. You have to have your experts, and Dr. Hodges is our expert. She's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Talked about item C being a written report. The next item is D, Student Information System and Enterprise Resource Planning Platform. And we have our Director of IT Services, Brad Pierce, coming forward, along with the Executive Director for Business Services, Amy Day.
Could I just make a comment on the ELA adoption? And that's okay. I just wanted to, I guess, share appreciation for the fact that you're thinking about you're only in year one of a newly adopted K-5 math curriculum. It's like too much to take on right now, and to postpone that, I think, is a really smart idea for all of the staff. And so just appreciation for recognizing that and putting the brakes on.
That's just listening to the folks whose boots are on the ground and heeding what their needs are. And so thank you for recognizing that. Were there any other questions? I kind of moved through the ELA piece and I apologize for that. Okay, we're going to turn it over to you all.
Good evening, President Thomas and board members, Superintendent Banner. We were made aware earlier this year that WSIPSI has set a goal to have all districts migrated off of Skyward, our current student information system, also abbreviated as SIS, by the 2029-2030 school year. Based on the designated twilight of the current system, we've developed a roadmap for evaluating current SIS and enterprise resource planning, abbreviated ERP, platform requirements and migration to new platforms that we want to share with you tonight. Please note, there is no deadline for the ERP system. We are evaluating both systems because several vendors offer a combined SIS and ERP system. Having district profiles of both systems would allow us to evaluate potential combined options later in the process. The SIS is the main system for student data, including schedules, grades, attendance, special programs, and discipline. The ERP is our human resources and financial management system. Our current SIS is Skyward, and our current ERP is Munis. The deadline was a factor in us starting review work earlier this year. We view the deadline as an opportunity to evaluate current system use and needs with a goal to take a measured, phased approach that prioritizes stakeholder input, clearly defined requirements, and risk reduction, rather than rushing into a product-based decision. The current work is focused entirely on discovery and documentation, not on selecting a specific vendor or product. Stakeholder groups are being asked to review what is currently being used, what is missing, and what is not being used within current SIS and ERP platforms. Council members serve as executive sponsors responsible for identifying group leads and members for this work. Our target for completed stakeholder feedback collections is June of 2026, with final documentation completed by August of 2026. Final documentation will be a validated system profile that defines required functionality, integrations, and dependencies, as well as support and operational expectations. This ensures that future decisions are driven by district needs, not sales demonstrations. Moving into year 2, the 2026-27 school year, we will post requests for proposals, or RFP, using the SIS and ERP profiles developed this year. Our tentative goal is to have the RFP, posted by October of 2026. Submissions will then be reviewed in 2 phases: review of the documentation returned in the response, as well as demos with selected vendors. We will utilize the same stakeholder groups from the profile project for the RFP reviews to ensure that needs and goals identified are matched to potential new products. After the new systems are identified, the results will be presented at the March 2027 board work session, with a board resolution for purchase to follow at the May 2027 regular meeting. Target date for a finalized contract would be July of 2027, which will then begin the project management process for the migration. School year 2027-28 will see the bulk of the migration work. Both the current and new systems will run at the same time during the transition to maintain uninterrupted operations until the new platforms are fully implemented. The 2 main components of the migration will be data preparation and staff training. Current data will be reviewed to ensure it is formatted as accurately as possible for migration to the new system. Once in the new system, data will be validated to confirm it migrated as expected. Training resources and guides will be developed for supporting all staff. Subject matter experts and power users will be identified to help with migration, staff training, and continued support after transition. The target go-live date is summer of 2028, ensuring the new systems are fully ready for use in the 2028-29 school year. This timeline positions the district 1 year ahead of the WSIPSI designated Skyward migration and provides additional flexibility to manage unknowns during implementation. Thank you for your time. Are there any questions?
Curious about the stakeholders and what groups those are.
So those are being developed through the council members right now, but they'll be made up of various people that use the system.
Concern would be making sure that there's a relatively small group of people that use it in a huge portion of their work, and that's the school nurses. So I would really hope that that group is part of the stakeholders, because it's very difficult to find a system. These are educationally based systems that need to be used in medical settings. It's really hard to find that. And so I would really encourage that stakeholder group to be part of the feedback to tell you what they need and that kind of stuff. Thank you.
Any other questions?
What's happening to Skyward?
So the current version of Skyward, known as SMS 2.0, is reaching its end of its life, and they are developing a replacement for that program. But its replacement is not built on a completely different foundation, so it is a full migration. So this is a good opportunity for us to review what we have and what we want.
I remember the days when we didn't have Skyward and we had like 3 different things that actually worked really well. And then we went to Skyward in the beginning, which was awful. And then it got better. Not much better, but it got better. And I remember always struggling with Skyward, honestly, because it did everything sort of well, whereas the other systems did everything really well, but you had to log on to 3 different systems. So are we looking at just one system to do all of the student information system stuff that, or are we looking at potentially more than one because those two might do better than just one?
I think that's the goal of this first round of figuring out what people need, what they are going to use, and then finding the best tools to fit those needs. So it might not be a one size fits all program.
Or it could be AI that won't open the pod bay doors. How many people in the room got that? Just think people with gray hair. Yeah, we're gonna, as was stated, we're not gonna succumb to a sales pitch. We're gonna take the time, and that's why this is happening. We're talking about it right now, well in advance, so that we can look at what our needs are and look at what by the time we look to buy, there may be something out there that honestly I joke, but that's everything's going to have some form of AI attached to it. But we're going to take our time and try to do it right. And we still might not like it. Found a lot of people don't like change. Office 365 is still struggling. I am with that. Any other questions for our team?
Thank you both so much.
Thank you. Next report will be from Executive Director of District Operations, Capital Projects and Operations, Rick Ring, to talk to us about some of the projects that may be coming before you at your next actionable meeting.
Evening, Board of Directors, President Thomas, Superintendent Banner. It's my pleasure to come and give you an update about Lakes High School. And we've talked about this a couple times at some capital project updates. But we've started our process of identifying some solutions for the floor issue. So my purpose tonight is just give you a quick overview so you know what's coming before you. So Lakes High School, a little background here was built in phases. So there's 3 different phases of Lakes High School. The first phase was the pathways section. It was built in 2009. And then the Success building was built in 2011. That's the building that I'll be talking about tonight. And the total project was completed in 2012 or 2012. So staff found issues with the concrete overlay on the floor on the second floor a few years back, and they started trying to patch it and do some repairs to it. So we dug into it a little bit deeper, and over time, this thing is actually just crumbling away. And so the first thing we did is we went out and made sure that we didn't have any structural issues. It's not a structural issue. We've had engineers look at that. Then we called the representatives from the original design and construction team to assess the problem and talk about some solutions. So we were bringing the stakeholders to the table. This included AHBL engineering firm. That's the engineers of record on the project. NAC Architects was the architects of record, and Absher Construction was the general contractor. So we brought all the players together to see if we could get a solution to it. As I stated, engineers found no solution or no structural concerns. However, we did find out that for cost saving measures, the district made a decision to use a wood deck on that, which in most cases a better decision would have been to go to a steel deck. Less flexibility and movement in there. Concrete thickness of the deck is thinner than the specifications called for in many places throughout the second floor. We talked about different types of solutions that we could do with this. And as we talked more and more about it, we found that the stakeholders disappeared. They pretty much moved away from it as they started seeing the problem and stuff. So we then dug into a little bit further to see what legal ramifications we could take against them. Unfortunately, we came up with RCW 4.16310, which places 6-year limitations on construction project warranty. So this project is outside the warranty phase. We tried to get the stakeholders at the table. no one really stepped up. So just a little background on that. So we continued with some solutions and looking into it. And we've kind of settled in after doing a lot of research on this and actually tearing some of the floor out and looking at it. The solution is to remove the existing floor tile and repair the concrete decking that's there. We're not tearing out the walls. The walls are built over the concrete decking on top of it. So we'd have to almost gut the whole thing. So we have identified not all the classrooms need to be done at this time. We have about 24,490 square feet that we're recommending to move forward. The replacement of this is really in the hallways and science rooms. We've identified a rubber tile to place over that. There are 24 by 24 rubber tiles that can be replaced in small sections if something happens to it. And putting carpet tiles, same size, similar sizes into the classroom areas. Part of that's for cost and part of that's just, it's a better classroom environment based on what our educators have told us. Through this, we identified the best procurement option would be using an Omnia cooperative agreement, which is actually a cooperative purchasing agreement that other agencies use. And one of the reasons that we have identified that is because you see what's going on in the world with oil, carpet, and this rubber all comes from petroleum products. That contract's locked in. It's a price lock that they can't raise the prices on us, even though what's going on in the world. So we have some flexibility to keep that price. And it's also made in the United States where we can get it. It's made in Ohio, so the ability to get that materials is a little bit better for us. Timeline or the estimated cost on this is approximately $650,000. Timeline is we're planning on bringing this to the April board. And then you can, in this picture here, you can kind of see how the floor is starting to crack. We see this throughout the school. And you see there, we used a key to stick it in. That's the concrete cracking. This is throughout the whole second floor of the Success building. This is just another mainline crack in the major hallway. And then we actually removed some of it to see what we had underneath, and you'll see a very thin piece of plywood decking is what is on there. So that we cut that piece out to see what was structurally underneath it, and we'll go back and patch it. So this was an effort to save money when they were building the school. They did run out of money in the middle of it, so they made some decisions that probably weren't the best ones at the time. There was lack of oversight on the project, and then a multi-phase project that allowed a lot of this stuff to go on, and then lack of oversight by, in my opinion, of the engineers and the construction team of reviewing what they did with the concrete. But we have no options to go back on this. So, and with that, I would see if there's any questions.
Director Caldwell.
So what can we do in the future to prevent this from happening again or somewhere else?
Well, there's a couple things I would say is one of the primary things that happened on this job was there was a decision made by the district to act as a owner provider where they manage some of the civil work on this project, which is like one of the worst things you can do. That's really a contractor responsibility. I think internally, we should have caught that earlier with our maintenance people when they first saw it. We should have brought the contractors back in earlier in the process before that time frame. It hadn't made it to that large of a problem, but if we would have brought them in earlier in the process, I think we could have cut some of those things off. For example, recently or this week, last week we went over to Thomas Middle School. We had a report of a leak and a crack in the floor and some leaks. We called Corsmo Construction. They showed up. They brought in plumbers. We looked at it. Turned out it was our problem, but it wasn't. It was more of a custodian dumping water and it running underneath the wall versus a crack. But having them show up immediately, they want to solve those problems when it's early stages. So it's that proactive approach that we have to take.
Like the plan is to take the tiles off, repair that concrete that's on top of the plywood, and then put a different topping on, if you will, like a different covering.
Yeah, they're gonna actually grind most of that of the topping off and then re-level it all out is what they're doing. That's why it's so expensive. Certain sections don't have to have a lot of work and other sections do, but we still have to get it all level. So they have to kind of pull it all together. And they call it floating it out. So they're just going to float it and then they'll start putting the new tile back on it.
Was wondering like so some of it you can see, so you know that area needs to be done. Some of it we're not doing right now because in theory there's not any visible damage there. And then my question is like, what if that is later, then is that just a different project? Is there a value to doing it all at once or
There's if you're familiar with Lakes High School, on the second floor in the Success, which is really the main building, all of the classrooms in the wings off the main hallway are fine, but there are some on the opposite side that have minimal impacts from this. The libraries on that side, things like that. So we're not seeing that level of problem over there. Well, you saw the plywood. Kids walk up and down it all day long. I mean, it's really structurally it's safe, but it's also probably not the right product originally on there.
Any other questions?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Great. Our next report is on the first reading of policy. As we start to look into policy, I would like to remind the board that what we bring you in these first readings is our recommended language. We also recognize that sometimes from WASDA, which it's been legally vetted, sometimes they will have some language in there that is not gender neutral. But in general, what we're bringing you is our recommended language, and we tend to stick with WASDA because we don't like to veer from the legal guardrails. And if there are changes that you all want, our ask of you is that you discuss and you give us kind of a consensus so that when we walk away, we're able to go, yep, we feel good about that. Kind of like what we did last time. I would probably look for a little more just consensus last time. All we want is a thumbs up. We're not advocating that something be different than what you want because they are your policies. And so as we leave, if we can make sure that we've got a consensus so that we can move into the second reading phase again, like we did the last time. Greg Davis, Executive Director for Human Resources and everything policy, because he loves policy, is here to share this round.
Thank you, Board President Thomas, board members, and Superintendent Banner. This evening, I'll be presenting information regarding proposed changes to various board policies, along with the reasons for the changes. There will be a chance for questions at the end of each series. The majority of policies before you tonight are connected to a review of our 2000 series conducted by WASDA. We contracted with WASDA to review our 2000, 4000, and 6000 series. They recently provided us with their recommendations for the 2000 series. We will start with those recommendations. 14 impacted policies will be in the following slides. There's 7 of them, and there's the other. Okay. So our first one is policy 2030, service animals in schools. The revisions to this policy were made to align with Substitute House Bill 2822. The definition of a service animal was changed to include dogs or miniature horses, and the definition of a covered disability was expanded to include psychiatric and intellectual disabilities. The policy also adds examples of work tasks that animals may perform. And lastly, the policy outlines permissible and impermissible ways a principal may inquire about the needs of a service animal and the service animal's qualifications. Policy 2104, federal and/or state-funded special instructional programs. Revisions were made to allow for the development and implementation of a procedure. Additional revisions were made for clarity and housekeeping changes to reflect Every Student Succeeds Act, also known as ESSA. Policy 2150, co-curricular programs. WASDA has revised this policy to comply with OSPI's revision of Chapter 392-190 of the Washington Administrative Code. Revisions were made so that a person cannot be excluded from participation based on their inclusion in any category in the district's non-discrimination policy. Policy 2151. Interscholastic activities. A number of significant changes were made to this policy. They include: a person cannot be excluded from participation based on their inclusion in any category in the district's non-discrimination policy. Funding will be provided for athletic and recreational activities for both sexes, but total spending does not have to be equal between them or between separate male and female teams. Students with disabilities will be given reasonable accommodations to participate in existing activities. If participation is still not possible, the district may offer separate athletic opportunities designed for students with disabilities. The district may have separate teams for each sex if the sport is competitive or a contact sport. However, if a sport is offered for one sex but not the other, and opportunities have been limited, students of the excluded sex may be allowed to try out. Contact sports include activities like boxing, wrestling, rugby, ice hockey, football, and basketball. Schools must provide equal athletic opportunities for both sexes by considering factors such as available sports, equipment, scheduling, travel support, coaching, facilities, medical services, housing if applicable, and publicity. The district will evaluate athletic programs in each school annually to ensure equal opportunity for both sexes, conduct a student interest survey every 3 years to assess interest in sports and help guide program planning, and provide separate or scheduled facility use such as locker rooms, showers, or training rooms for male and female students. Policy 2161, special education and related services for eligible students. Changes were made to reflect recent legislative changes. The first is WASDA revised this policy in response to OSPI's updated rules for the provision of special education services enacted by House Bill 1130. The second change was based on Senate Bill 5253, Special Education Services, provision until age 22. And then the last change was made based on House Bill 1207, preventing and responding to harassment, intimidation, bullying, and discrimination in schools. Policy 2163, response to intervention. WASDA has revised this policy to comply with WAC 392-172A-03060, process based on the student's response to scientific research-based intervention. Changes include the inclusion of scientific research-based interventions. The policy also outlines parental involvement in the response to the intervention process. Policy 2190, highly capable programs. Revisions were made to align with requirements outlined in Senate Bill 5072. Policy 2340, religious-related activities and practices. WASDA revisions to this policy were made to balance student rights with constitutional mandates focusing on secular education. Okay, religion may be taught only in an objective, neutral, and non-devotional way for educational purposes, for example, in history, literature, or arts. Schools must not favor or criticize any religion and must follow constitutional guidelines, secular purpose, no advancing, inhibiting religion, and no excessive involvement. Religious-related materials or activities must support secular learning goals and educate rather than indoctrinate. Students may express their religious or non-religious views in assignments and discussions if relevant to the task. Staff cannot require students to reveal or critique their beliefs, grade work based on religious expression, censure lawful religious expression, or impose their beliefs on students. Students may opt out of activities that conflict with their religious beliefs. Student-led religious groups may meet before or after school if other non-curricular groups are allowed. Religious groups may rent school facilities, but their events must be clearly separate from school-sponsored activities. Students may distribute religious literature under the same rules as other literature. Non-students cannot distribute religious promotions. Religious services or devotional speakers are not allowed during school hours or school-sponsored events. Religious themes in music, art, and drama may be used for cultural or educational value, but must be presented neutrally and balanced with non-religious works. Holiday activities should focus on historical or cultural aspects, not religious worship. Students may be excused for religious instruction off campus or for religious holidays with a parent request. Students may wear religious attire or symbols, if not disruptive. Students may engage in private, non-disruptive prayer, but staff cannot encourage or discourage it. Graduation ceremonies must not include religious elements, and schools do not sponsor baccalaureate services. Concerns over religious practices in school can be reported to the principal or the district superintendent. Policy 2409, World's Language Mastery Based Credit. These revisions are based on House Bill 1599, promoting career and college readiness through modified high school graduation requirements. New to this policy, the district will review the subgroups that are receiving the credit. If disproportionality is found, the district should seek to remedy any inequitable access. Policy 2413, Equivalency Credit for Career and Technical Education Courses. These revisions are based on House Bill 1658 and Senate Bill 5617, Skill Centers, School District Courses Equivalencies. Changes include providing options to obtain credit through independent study or experiential education, which includes paid work, credit availability for specific courses if the student receives a C or higher grade in the next level course. Policy 2414, Community Service. Revisions were made to align with Model Policy 2410, which is high school graduation requirements. The district may, in its discretion, include community service in its district's high school graduation diploma requirements. Policy 2418, Waiver of High School Graduation Credits. Revisions were made to be consistent with House Bill 1295. Students released from institutional education facilities. The number of credits was updated pursuant to WAC 180-51-068. Policy 2420, Grading and Progress Reports. Revisions were made to comply with House Bill 1296, promoting a safe and supportive public education system. The district will inform parents or legal guardians about their students' academic progress, including the right to receive periodic reports on their students' educational growth and development in accordance with RCW 28A.150.240, and to receive notice of their students' performance on state learning standard tests and assessments in accordance with RCW 28A.230.195. The district will also inform the parents or legal guardians whether their students' performance could threaten their ability to be promoted to the next grade level. Parents or legal guardians have the right to request an in-person meeting with their students, classroom teachers, and principals to discuss any resources or strategies available to support and encourage their students' academic improvement. Policy 2421, promotion and retention. Revisions were made to align with updates to Model Policy 2107, comprehensive early literacy, concerning the notification of parents when their children are below basic on the 3rd grade statewide English language arts assessment. Okay. That was the last of the changes to the 2000 series. Are there any questions on those before I move on to the 2 and the 6000s?
Any questions?
They're mostly just clarification questions because I don't have enough knowledge, but on 2150, can you give us an example of what a co-curricular program is? I wasn't sure I understood that. It sounds like is it like a field trip that's related to what they're doing in school, or is it something different? Like, I think the policy is fine. I just don't understand what that is.
Choir would be an example. Band, where you have the classroom instructional time during the course of the day, and the club or the activity of band or choir clubs after school. The band teacher is still the advisor of that extended additional learning activity, i.e.
I was just reading it and I could not figure out what that was. So thank you. And then the other thing was about it's in policy 2151. I think that's athletics, and it talks about insurance and how the students are required to carry a certain amount of insurance, but then it says that the district can make an exception. And I just wondered how that worked for our students. Does then the district cover the insurance, or I can't find it now, but I can't find 2151 to find that.
Student athletes are required to have either insurance with their families, or the district has a provider, usually within the school, where they have an at-cost, lower cost available insurance that also.
Student have to pay that cost to the district in order to play sports. I didn't realize that, so thank you. And then my only other thing is it's minuscule, but and I can give it to Carmen, but on policy 2130, one of the changes just has inquiries is spelled wrong at the
I
bottom.
go backwards for a second.
Yeah.
So if we have a student that is McKinney-Vento, there are provisions, but it's not like everybody that can't afford insurance. But if you're a foster child or McKinney-Vento child, then we have provisions to help support.
It just struck me. I didn't realize that rule was there. And so then I just was afraid that might be impacting some of our kids that wouldn't have that. So I'm glad there's some things, and I hope that it means that our kids can all play.
What was the one that you said had a misspelling?
Pardon?
You said there was a policy that had like something was misspelled.
It's 2030 at the bottom. It's page 124. The last section in red, the principal shall not ask about the nature or extent of a person's disability, but may make 2 inquiries. It should have an extra I. I think. Not a big deal, but we want our policies to have the right.
Yeah, I see it. I see what you're saying.
Okay. Do you need me to give you a copy, or you got it?
I see it.
Okay.
I see it.
That's all for me. Thank you.
I'll go next. So again, on policy 2030, by identifying it being a dog or a miniature horse, are we excluding any service animals by limiting which animals they can be?
Not doing.
This is just the definition that the state expanded to. This is just the definition that the state created. So we're just using, again, what's recommended to us by WASDA.
I would like to not use any dog or miniature horse and refer back to animal. Because I fear that by limiting to dog or miniature horse, you're excluding some potential service animals. Not that I have any knowledge of such, but I just want to make sure we're being inclusive.
Any other comments regarding that?
I think I'm okay either way. Animals probably more inclusive. I think the part that's really important is that is trained to do work or perform a task for the benefit of the individual. Yes, that's the piece that makes it a service animal.
Yes, and if you have a list, to have a list is to exclude. So when you have, it can be this or that, that means it can't be anything else.
Wonder why that decision was made. And I agree with Dr. Kim that it's the definition more important than the specific animal. I liked the recommendations that they added. It seems to make it, it validates what the service animal can do in a way that I think is helpful and appropriate. But I could go with animal as well.
Director Lauer?
I already had questions about the miniature horse thing that I sent through email, and I'm trying not to be insensitive to folks who need miniature horses as part of their therapy. But I can tell you from my own family's perspective, if my daughter's anywhere near a horse, she dies. So she can't be anywhere near horses. So my question is that with the service animals, which is a fairly new thing, I think, in the schools, how do we handle animals that become aggressive or that are the kids that are either afraid of those animals or potentially allergic to those animals? What do those children do, or how does the principal manage that in the building?
Well, essentially it becomes case by case. And so you cannot exclude, but if I'm afraid of animals, or let's just pick one, tarantulas, if that ended up being a service animal, let's not say it can't be. It's an animal, right? It's an arachnid and it could cause causes me this. But you handle in case by case situations. And so it could be that my parents are going to say, I get it. That student has to be able to have that animal. I want my child moved to a different classroom, or most of the time parents will say, no, I don't. Why does my kid have to move? Right. Ultimately, you find a medium space that meets everybody's needs to some degree. And so it really becomes a case by case situation. And keep in mind, service animals don't just get to, like, you don't just get to put a cape on a service animal. They have to be trained. They can't be aggressive, or they have to show the ability to be around lots of people, et cetera. You actually have to train the humans around them, like unless they're off duty, you're not supposed to touch them or pet them. They have to actually be released from their duty. So there's a lot on each side of the equation, and you just have to find your way to the middle.
Affirming what Superintendent Banner was talking about, a service animal is different than an emotional support animal. There's a lot of training that is involved in that. To the point that service animals don't even eliminate until they're told to. So they know there's just a whole lot of training. So you don't have the issue with aggressive animals with service animals. But there are needs that have to be managed sometimes on a case by case basis with allergies.
So do we want to change that to reflect animals or to leave it as is? I kind of it can go either way, but we need to make a decision here.
Is everybody okay with changing it to animal?
I prefer to err on the side of inclusion for animal.
I'm okay with animals. We can change that.
So is a thumbs down consent? Can you live with that? Okay.
You
Got it.
prefer to leave it as
You would prefer to
as
leave it.
written.
Just
any
wanted
dog
to
or
make
miniature.
sure. Commit. I love it.
I was just thinking about what Superintendent Banner was saying, and it does say in the bottom section that you can't require the documentation that it has been a service animal. I understand that absolutely they have more trainings, but it was interesting to me that you can't require that documentation. And you can ask a couple of questions, but inquiries, but you can't
With an extra eye.
with an extra eye, but you can't make the inquiries about it if it's readily apparent that an animal is trained to do the work. I just thought it was very interesting the way that was all written. So if it appears obvious that the animal is doing the work, then you don't ask anything, but you can ask if it doesn't appear to be the case, but you can't ask for proof. It's very tricky. I do appreciate the consideration of allergies. That does happen. And I think exactly, you just have to solve the problem and work around it, work with the families.
My next question is in policy 2340, religious related activities and practices, section B. I was very uncomfortable with the word indoctrinate and wondered about its inclusion.
Can
Yeah,
you
it-
elaborate on that, please?
Sure. It's on page, I can't figure out the page numbers, but
142.
I don't have.
It's 142. It's the policy 2340. I think you're looking at bullet point number B, letter B.
Well, right, but I guess, I think you should look at my numbering because my
Oh.
numbering says it's page 129
Oh, my numbers are
of
different.
96.
Never
96
mind then.
Sorry. So that's why I'm like, what numbers are you referring to? But that's okay. But yes, it's in part B. No worries. It just says the criteria to guide the academic inquiry in the study of religion will seek the same neutrality, objectivity, and educational effectiveness expected in other areas of the curriculum. In addition, materials and activities should be sensitive to America's pluralistic society and should educate rather than indoctrinate. That word has a lot of negativity associated with it. And I would think just ending the sentence at educate has the same meaning.
For me, as somebody that identifies as not having traditional Christian American values, having indoctrinate in there is reassuring that indoctrination of religious ideals is not happening in schools. So that feels protective to me and not offensive.
So, Dr. Kim, if I understand correctly, you feel safe knowing you can come to school and somebody's not going to back you in a corner and try to get you to choose a certain religion or
Children.
your children.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I understand. Yeah,
Yes.
I would tend to agree with that.
I'm trying to understand where you're coming from because I want to hear what you're saying and I agree. I think indoctrinate is a very negatively connotated word. And I think it's specifically there for the reasons that Dr. Thomas and Kim have said. I feel like a lot of times there's a lot of social angst and people are uncomfortable with the idea that schools are indoctrinating students about one thing or another. And so I feel like this is differentiating education versus indoctrination. And I think you get people that are concerned that they're being indoctrinated about when you start looking at reproductive health and sex ed and those kinds of things, they feel like their kids are being taught what to think. And I feel like this is trying to get at, we're trying to educate, which in my mind, and maybe we need to spell it out, but in my mind is teaching kids how to think and not what to think. And I think that's the spirit of what it's meant to say. And so if that's what we think, and then maybe we need to talk about what it should say instead. But I think that's where it's coming from, but it sounds like it's rubbing you in a way that's not that way. So I'm not sure I understand exactly where you're coming from, but I feel like that's what you're trying to say, that it rubs you, it's uncomfortable to you in some way.
Right. It feels uncomfortable because of all of the political things that are happening in the world. And educators in general being accused of indoctrinating students into specific ways of thinking. And so I understand clearly the separation of church and state and completely agree with that. I just am not sure how to clearly communicate my thoughts that would be more clear.
I understand what you're saying, because I think you're saying you're seeing educators that are being accused of indoctrinating, and that
Correct.
doesn't feel good to you. Like, no, and are you saying you don't agree with an educator indoctrinating someone?
Correct.
Okay. I think that's why it's in there, is to say that there's a difference between educating and indoctrinating. I think you actually agree with I think we all agree on what should happen and that we should not indoctrinate children.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that's a good place to start, is that we all agree on that.
Yeah.
So does this policy support that view? Materials and activities should be sensitive to America's pluralistic society and should educate rather than indoctrinate.
I think it does.
To me, it says what we
Want it to
seem
say.
to agree on.
I think particularly in the current political climate where we have the 10 Commandments being posted in schools, not in Washington State, but in other states, ensuring that we have a policy stating we will not indoctrinate feels really important to me right now. And I get the connotations with the word and the fear that teachers are indoctrinating across a variety of things. But to me, that just says having it in our policy, we're not doing that. Look, it's even in our policy. We're not doing that.
That's fine.
So
I'll just agree to disagree about that. I'm totally respecting what they say, but when you rather than just does not.
okay.
And then I think I just had one more question I had circled. Oh, in policy number 2413, on the second page of that policy, in the one, I would say third paragraph on the backside of that page, for a certain number of times. So I was just wondering about how many times that would indicate that the student may take the examination.
Can you say like what portion of the policy? Up there. Oh, insert. I see it. Thank you.
That was my only other comment or noticing.
Right above that, it talks about mastery-based credit is available in fill-in subjects or courses.
See, I missed that part.
I did too. What,
So both those sections are that way for the flexibility of the board to say what courses they would want that to be demonstrated for,
Right.
or do they want to have a student be able to take a test 100 times, 10 times, 12 times? So it's your policy would be the numbers.
We'll
that's-
come back to you with a recommendation this next week.
Thank you. Yeah,
Great.
we would rather see the
Thank you.
recommendation.
All right, and then I wanted to circle back to the service animal conversation. So per Washington state law, to qualify for a service animal, it's supposed to be a dog or a miniature horse. So if we go back to animal, we're expanding the definition beyond Washington state law.
Can't do policy that's outside of the parameters of Washington state law.
Well, there you go.
Defined in law that
Yeah.
way, then we need to stick with what the law
Yeah, we'll
says.
stick with.
and also what that means is that you can't bring a tarantula. Like,
Correct,
because the
or-
law is that you have to be.
Right.
Right?
Correct.
The
correct.
unless the tarantula looks like a miniature horse, then you're okay.
Yeah, all right. Anything else? Any other questions?
Do you have one on 2151? And I think this is one where I'm struggling with the binary definition of sex because sex is not binary. Even biological sex is not binary. And I know that it's listed in there for gender equality in sports and that it's important to maintain that. Equity of opportunities. And I'm struggling. So I guess I'm just throwing that out there. I like that we have the piece that talks about people won't be discriminated for all of our lists that we came up with that is very inclusive. But all throughout that policy, it's all listed male, female, male, female, male, female. And I don't have a good solution other than people of all genders, people of, or maybe it's even just a statement somewhere in the policy that we recognize that gender is not binary. Even though the policy is listed in binary, I don't know. I'm just struggling. So I had to throw it out there.
Thought about that too. And I wondered if changing sex to gender made it feel better. I don't know if it does for you.
I think gender is even more of not a binary than sex, right?
Is this something that we can think about and bring back? Or does it have to be decided in this meeting?
You won't have another opportunity to
Okay.
discuss it other than this meeting unless you postpone the second reading, which is fine as well. You could also lift this policy out and postpone this policy for another time and then discuss this again at the end of April. Or you could call a special meeting to discuss it. I mean, those are really realistic options.
Well, I'd rather not call a special meeting, but I'm just reaching out to members of the board to, sometimes experience says you need to sleep on it for a little bit before you come back and discuss it again. And so I'm just kind of throwing that out there for discussion.
Question. What are the parameters for executive session?
Legal matters, employee matters. Well, I can just tell you this one's not one for executive session. This would be needed to be done in an open public meeting.
Couldn't it be considered legal because of
No, I mean, you could try to stretch it, but I wouldn't recommend that you try to
Mm-mm.
stretch the parameters. Executive session, I can pull it up on the phone and I can tell you exactly the few things you can do in executive session.
Thank you.
Maybe the best thing to do, because I probably haven't thought about it enough to have a, and you also said maybe you don't have a real solution.
I
It's
don't have a
just something that's
solution
sitting
yet.
there. So I think I would follow President Thomas's sort of suggestion that maybe we like lift this one out and think about it a little bit longer, if that's what we want to do, rather than try to rush something.
Well, I'll certainly follow the recommendations of the board. But just listening, it seems like we should pull this one out and discuss it later.
Carmen, this is 21,
51.
2151.
2151. We'll be pulling out of this agenda for second reading and adding it to another discussion for the April workshop.
And I will try to come to April with some suggestions.
The presentation from you, 50 pages. No, just kidding.
Of maybe thinking about a sentence that's sort of a disclaimer is a good direction to head that. So if there are people who agree with that, maybe sort of drafting in our own individual minds, like a way to do that. And then that might make us feel more prepared to talk about it.
I think one of the things that you could possibly do if you choose to, if not, we could also do this, is type it out and tell ChatGPT or another AI bot what you're looking for and give me 10 suggestions or 3 suggestions, and it will throw some things at you. And that might just be a starter.
Colleague AI and I are besties.
Right. Are there any other,
I do.
Director Lowry?
Policy number 2418, it's just, I'm curious. I thought that maybe we were changing from 30 credits to 24 credits because there had been a change maybe to the schedule of the schools, the high schools. But I guess that's not the case. So I guess my question is, there must be a reason that we're going from 30 to 24. That's my question.
Moving from 30 to 24. I know our institutional ed and or our open doors may have have the lower number of credit requirements, which still meets the state requirements. Ours are above.
So we're not talking about the comprehensive high schools here. We're talking about the alternative education settings, that sort of thing. I'm at 2418, waiver of high school graduation credits.
It used to be 30 credits for everyone and now it's 24.
The state Kev, I don't want to misspeak. Go ahead.
State minimum is 24 credits, 424. We exceed at 30. This just aligns with the state law that the minimum is 24, which is the norm across the state. You know, we are above. And yes, our open doors program does align with 424 for open doors, sub rules, and OSCI and RCW action laws. And it is codified in our existing board policy.
Let's go higher than the state minimum. So that's why the policy says 24, because we can't do 30.
District, we wouldn't shift that without a conversation with the board, just because it's a huge leap.
What do we require right now? It's 24 or 30 is what kids need to graduate if they're in the general track. Okay.
Anything else?
That answer your question, Director Lowry?
So I guess my question was the comprehensive high schools, are they still staying per policy at 30? And then the alternative programs would be at 24 depending on what we wanted to do, correct? Okay, I'm good.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. No, I have two more.
No.
I,
Okay. That was about a
yeah, that was just a big family. This is a small family. Okay, so we have two policies in the 6,000 series. The first one is policy 6114, gifts or donations. The change in this policy is increasing the value of the donation requiring board approval from $5,000 to $10,000. The amount has been $5,000 since 2015, so we are just adjusting the amount to account for inflation. Okay, and the final policy I have tonight is policy 6910, construction financing. 6910 is not a new WASDA policy, but it has not been previously adopted by the board. Revisions were made to align with RCWs 28A 530080 and RCW 28A 320330. So some changes to this policy are non-voter approved debt protocols. So the authority, the board may contract indebtedness for property acquisition or authorization duties without a public vote, subject to certain limits. The threshold for non-voted bonds cannot exceed $250,000 without a public hearing. Public notice requirements, notice of intent must be published once per week for 2 consecutive weeks, with the final notice of hearing at least 7 days before the hearing. For compliance and transparency, the project specificity resolutions for bond elections must specify the buildings to be constructed or remodeled. And fund reallocation, any changes to the planned expenditure of debt finance or state assistance requires a public hearing and a new board resolution. And the superintendent must notify the state, being OSPI, of construction intent and eligibility requirements before submitting bond proposals to voters. Okay. So that was my final slide. Did anybody have questions on those final two policies?
Didn't until you said that this is not a new policy, but it hadn't been adopted yet. Is there a reason that it wasn't adopted? Just what didn't come up, or was there something that I wouldn't think of that was a reason that they didn't want to pass it before?
I don't have an answer to that question. There's a number of policies that we will have. WASDA might have a draft per policy or a model policy, but districts don't implement it. It would depend on, they're categorized as either critical, important, or discretionary. And I don't remember off the top of my head what this one is, but basically if something's critical, then you're supposed to have it. If it's important, you should have it. And if it's discretionary, you can choose to have it.
It's one that didn't get, we
Right.
just didn't think we needed it right then.
Sure.
And it's not because there was some big controversy about it that nobody wanted to, I think it's fine then.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Greg, we will make the adjustments as requested and remove the 2151 or whichever one it was, 2150, 2151.
I also have a suggestion for that. Maybe if I can bring some statements in, we could maybe have it on our discussion agenda at the next meeting. Just pull it off the consent agenda. We could make the change and then approve it. Or would you rather do it at one of these meetings?
So I would, yes, but in this way. Let's
Okay.
pull it off and have the package that will be approved in individual action items under second reading. And then there can be, excuse me, a motion made to review that,
Review
look at
the
that.
other.
And if there's in your discussion, then you could approve it right there as well as a separate item. That's just a motion.
Yeah, okay. Because I think we might be able to do that.
Aye.
Okay, our last report of the evening is our budget update. We are in the budget process, the process that allows you then in July to adopt a budget. Our Executive Director for Business Services, Amy Day, is here to give our budget update. And I think I'll be, Matt Young, Director of Finance, is here as well. And I may be chiming in with them as well.
Okay, good evening, Board President Thomas, board members, Superintendent Banner. This evening, we'll be presenting the first of our 26-27 budget development updates. My goal is to present to you over the next 4 months the development of the upcoming budget. We will then finalize it at the July board meeting where you will hopefully adopt it. We'll start off by reviewing enrollment. Enrollment is the primary driver of our funding. Simply speaking, the more students we have, the more funding we receive. This graph shows our enrollment trend over the last several years. You can see in the 1920 school year, we had well over 12,000 students. Then you can see a sizable drop the following year, which coincides with the pandemic. We're not alone in seeing this drop in enrollment. This was a nationwide trend, but as you can see over the last couple of years, the numbers have leveled off. The good news is there that our district was conservative in our enrollment projections, which has helped avoid a major budget shortfall. Our preliminary projection for next year is relatively flat. We'll have more detailed information on that next month's presentation. Okay, let's look at our revenue. This chart provides a visual of our funding breakdown from last school year. You can see the largest piece is our state general purpose funding. State funding is built around what is called Basic Education Allocation, or BEA. This is the formula the state uses to make sure every district receives funding for what the legislation defines as basic education. We also received over $64 million in state special purpose funding. This funding must be spent in certain areas such as special education. In red, you can see that we received over $36 million in federal funding. This includes various grants such as Title I and Impact Aid. The other larger piece in green of $25 million is our local taxes, otherwise known as our voter-approved levy. Next, we'll look at expenditures, where the money goes. Our first priority is always our schools. Each school is funded based on its enrollment and any specialized needs the students may have. That ensures resources are directed to where students are learning every day. Once school allocations are made, the remaining dollars are used to support everything it takes to run the district. These are our district level support services, things like transportation, maintenance, technology, safety, payroll, all the behind the scenes functions that keep our schools operating smoothly. So as you can see here, much of the cost went toward basic education instruction, the core teaching and learning that happens every day. We also operate a large and robust special education program, which spent over $55 million last year to support students with diverse learning needs. Just over $10 million was invested in vocational and career technical education, primarily our CTE programs in the middle and high school. Next, we have compensatory programs. This category includes many of our federal grants, which fund things like intervention services, academic supports, and multilingual learning programs. We also have support services which cover essentials such as transporting students to and from school and providing school meals. This category also includes a lot of the behind the scenes operations that keep the district running smoothly: technology, maintenance, safety, etc. Finally, the other support category, which includes programs such as early learning. Here is a summary of our fund balance last year with the budget compared to actuals. The far right column shows that we started the year with about $49 million. We brought in more than $260 million in revenue and spent $274 million. That leaves us with an ending fund balance for last year of $36 million. So that is the general fund. Here are the other funds. All of these funds have healthy balance. ASB fund, which represents student extracurricular activities, maintained a balance of about $673,000, very similar to the past years. Capital Projects Fund is our major construction projects. We have a fund balance of about $52.3 million to start the year. Transportation Vehicle Fund, which can only be used to purchase yellow school buses, had an ending balance of just over $12 million. And finally, the Debt Service Fund, which is used to pay off our bond debt, had an ending balance of $28 million. As we plan for next year's budget, it's important to note that we are facing financial pressures due to state funding cuts, increased costs, and volatility of federal title funding. This requires responsible and significant adjustments to ensure our financial solvency now and over time. As staffing represents over 82% of our budgeted expenses, there will be reductions to staff. We will, however, work to minimize disruption to the state prototypical school model as much as possible. Our hope is that many of the necessary reductions can occur through attrition. Our commitment is to move through this process with transparency, strategic timing, and a continued support and focus on student learning and operational stability. Tonight, we are asking the board for consensus on the ending fund balance target range that you would like us to plan toward. A couple items to keep in mind: our ending fund balance per board policy 6022 is a percent of revenues. Currently 5% of revenues is the board policy. Secondly, the legislative session just ended, so we have yet to receive our revenue projections for next year. We're currently working off of our revenue trend projection. So the ask specifically, we are seeking direction on whether the target should be the 5%, 6%, or 7% of the revenues. To support your decision-making, it is important to note that each percentage point represents approximately $2.8 million in additional reductions. For the 26-27 school year, we recommend targeting the 6% range. This range supports the long-term financial health of the district while balancing the reality of significant cost pressures ahead. It also meets and exceeds the minimum fund balance per board policy. As we have monitored and alerted you to many times, we are now back to pre-pandemic funding models. Go ahead.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, please.
Just to add a few things, and there's a little bit of a timeline that Amy will walk through where we are and where we're going. As was stated, we are and have consistently informed the board that we are we will be at pre-pandemic fund balances. And so as a conservative projector of student enrollment, we have not seen problematic spaces. As a good fiscal manager of both our regular revenues and our COVID revenues, we have not seen those problematic spaces, but we are at a point where expenditures have outpaced revenues. The state will come to you or come to the public and they will talk about how they have made advancements in funding education this year. They will talk about how they fully fund based on the McCleary decision. And in the way they see the McCleary decision, they believe that they are correct. We have information and data that shows exactly how many dollars we put into a given space outside of what the state allocates us, from special education to nursing to athletics to safety, et cetera. So it's very important that as you listen or hear what the state is saying, they will say that you don't need any more money from special education. And the reason they will say that is they will say basic ed funds special education fully. The reason they say that is because as a state and several state organizations, we focused on the big three last year, which was special education, transportation, and material supplies and other costs. And we were able to show across the state that the state does not fully fund special education. Let's just stick with that for right now. And so because we were able to show that, they passed a law that said this year, you will code every bit of special education to basic education, which is just a shell game, moving the target, right? And so data-wise, when you look at it in a spreadsheet, it will show that all of special education is funded by basic education dollars. Well, all that means is that the $12.5 million extra in special education last year, it's showing as 12.5 million deficit somewhere else. You're robbing from Peter to pay Paul. You can fill in the names there. We will pay an additional $735,000 in medical insurance, in liability insurance this year. That is across the state. The Washington Risk Pool indicated to everyone across the state that they serve plan on an 18% increase. For us, that's $735,000. Last year, the state promised us LEA, local effort assistance. In the next 4 years, just 1 year removed from their promise, they have now clawed back a major portion of that, which for us in the next 4 years will equate to $17 million, roughly $17 million. About 1.8 next year, close to 5 the year after that, close to 5 the year after that, and we will surpass 5. When I say close to 5, I mean like 4.8 or 4.9. And then in 2030, it will be 5 million. So these are realities, and that's the only way that I can come to you and present them. We will be looking at asking you, as was stated, for your consensus on going with a board policy 5% minimum fund balance or ending fund balance, same thing, 7% or 6%. We are recommending 6% because we know that next year, starting in September, we will be having this same conversation amongst ourselves. And so what do we need to cut next year? So we just are in that space. Did it take a little longer for us because of the way we were being fiscally responsible and conservative? Yes, it did. But we are going to look to cut $6 to $8 million of expenditures for the 26-27 school year. And as Executive Director Day indicated, the only way to do that sustainably is through staffing cuts. We will stay away from schools as much as we possibly can, meaning their prototypical funding model. We will try to stay away from that. If there's something extra, and there's still a few extras post-COVID, right, that people are going to, it's like moving to Office 365. You're going to hate it for the next 3 years. But if you don't move, then we're going to be in a deeper and deeper situation as we progress through the next several years. So our goal is fiscal solvency. And what that's going to mean is spending less. It is actually a really easy formula. It's no different than your household or your checking account. Spend less than you take in, and you'll end up with some money saved each year. It's a very complicated formula because you're impacting people's lives and livelihood. And it is a necessary formula. Otherwise, we just go further and further under. So this year, we're looking at a short timeline. So the end of April, we will be coming to you, end of April, meaning the April workshop. If we get through policy, we will come to you with, nobody felt like that was a chuckle. We will come to you with a more itemized, specific plan. My team has been working on this for well over a month, especially when we saw that LEA was being clawed back and money we counted on is going away. It didn't mean we wouldn't have to make cuts. It just means that the cuts are deeper now. And so in April, we will come to you for discussion workshop because in May, we are coming to you with a resolution to do a reduction in force relevant to and specific to the needs of the budget needing, the expenditures needing to go down. This is not going to be a happy time for anyone, let alone the people who have to sit with the people to say. And so we expect that you may get folks reaching out to you. Please divert them back to me, or people may come for public comment, but this is a must. It has to happen. We've had conversation with some of our stakeholders and our union leadership in order to progress to this moment. And the timing is just tricky, but we're moving forward, and we're going to make sure that this district lasts over time and doesn't have to go into our capital projects fund, doesn't get taken over. What do we call it when the state comes in and makes all the decisions for us? Binding conditions. That even sounds worse, like, right? So this is where we are. Would you like to maybe just see where, point out where we are on the timeline?
So this is our development timeline for the community and for the board. We started earlier this month. We hosted a community budget workshop here at the SSC, and we will hold a second workshop in May to continue gathering feedback and answering questions. We are expanding our community outreach this year. We're doing something new by going into the community instead of just here at the SSC. We'll be conducting outreach at the Aladdin Apartments, this week and at Rainier Elementary in April, just to ensure that families who might not have the opportunity to come here still can have an opportunity to be heard. We are launching the Thought Exchange Survey, as we've done in years past, gathers broader community input on priorities and student support learning. We can hear from students, parents, staff, everybody in this way and gather it to bring back to the board. We're doing the school level budget work. Much of the detailed budgeting that everybody's probably wondering about, that starts happening once we get our revenues released, and we'll be working with school sites. That takes place in April. Principals, department leaders, and all of our directors will align resources to start preparing the buildings as best we can. And board workshops. We will have multiple board workshops with you. These sessions are designed to make sure that you have all the information, context, and analysis needed to make well-informed decisions when we present the budget for adoption in July. So this schedule reflects our commitment to transparency, community engagement, and thoughtful planning as we work toward a responsible and sustainable budget for the upcoming school year.
You guys may also have some anxieties. None of you have ever had to deal with this. I don't know that, boy, I remember being a principal, so it was a lot of years ago. We were in a space where we had to like decrease spending. We're decreasing spending now. We're not just waiting. So anxieties for yourselves and how, people may approach you and I just would say, recognize that may be a thing for you, and lean on my team, lean on each other, and we'll weather.
I have a clarification question about I can't remember what you called it, but when we're talking about 5% and 6%, 7%, that I want to make sure I understand. So at the end of the year, there's a certain amount that we are ideally over, right? Or under our budget, right? You could say it however you wanted, I guess, but so it's what we have left over. Like we projected this number and we spent this number, and it's the percent difference in that. Am I understanding that right?
Close. So you're going to have a beginning fund balance, what we start the year with. And then you have your revenue. So it's just add your revenues, subtract your expenditures, and that's your ending fund balance. That
Okay, so-
ending fund balance is something that we're speaking of here because that's.
So if you're talking about a 6% instead of a 5%, you're saying that's the target is to have a little bit extra more. So that
Now our fund balance is like 36,
At the beginning of the year, it was 36.
was 36. And if we go down to 6%, if I did my math right, we're looking at like 15.7.
About 16 million.
Yeah. So it's like, I like to think of it as our savings account. So like we have the savings account of 36 million, and we're going to let our savings account go down to a little under 16 million now. So I think it helps us weather the storm right now. Like this year, it will help, but we're not going to be able to pull that money again next year. So we won't have to make quite as many cuts this year as we would if we didn't pull from our savings to cover things. But we aren't going to have that money next year, and we're going to have to make more cuts to balance things.
If you end the year with your minimum of 5%, that's about a month's worth of pay.
Mhm.
So you don't want to live in that space.
Right.
A good friend of mine in another district just told me that they're doing another $7 million just to get back up to 5%. And they've been cutting over the last 3 years, I think 3 years. So this is why you want to be as conservative as possible. You want your revenues to outpace your expenditures so that you can build that cushion. It does not feel good even living at 5%. It doesn't feel good living at 6%. But we have to also be realistic about what we can do and accomplish in a given year, given budget year, and then moving on to the next one.
The question. So we voted to eliminate, was it 4 positions? So are you saying that we're going to be eliminating more positions for the next school year?
Yes, those 4 positions are minuscule compared to what we need to do. And those were from categorical federal funds. But yes.
So with the decrease in staffing and understanding education, are we going to have fewer expectations for the employees that are here?
No, so here's how I posed it to. First of all, let me be super clear. We're not going to have fewer expectations for folks at schools because we're not going to go at folks in schools. And if we do, it's because that's an extra position that's beyond what they need, or like that minimum. And so one of the things that I made clear is that we are not going to do less with less, but we may do less frequently with less. And the example that I give is if we mow this lawn out here every week, it might go down to every 2 weeks because we have less folks mowing the lawn. So we're going to have the same standard for lawn care. It's just not going to happen as much. And so I know that that's a very rudimentary kind of way to explain it. It's just the easiest that works in my brain. And so there will be a lot of redistribution. And there may be less. Yes, there may be some things that we do that we're not going to do anymore. But we're in the throes of having those conversations at a very high level right now. And like I said, our plan is that about a month from now, we're able to come to you with a more succinct plan. We're not going to come to you in a board meeting and say it's this person, or position, because that just throws people. But we will say it's this amount of money, and we are going to cut a certain percent, possibly from this department, this department, this department. And not everybody's equal in cuts, right? You can't just cut away from everything. For example, I need to get kids to school. I already don't have enough bus drivers. We're not going to cut positions there. So at least not in the driver capacity. I shouldn't have said that because now everybody who's not a driver is going to be like, don't do that. Help me out with that, Irene.
So the way things are now, with the federal government and state and those kind of things, do we look at worst case scenario? And that's what we're planning for, hoping that we don't have to go to that worst case scenario, but we're kind of ahead of the game because we've thought about the what ifs.
We're going to be looking at a lot more what ifs over the course of the next several years. For me to be happy about a 6% fund balance, that's what we would probably call best worst case scenario. So no, I would never be joyful about a 6% fund balance at the end of the year. I would be, if that's $16,000, I would really want like $22,000. So I'm always, as a risk manager, meaning a former PE teacher, I'm always planning a lesson for what's the worst possible thing that could happen here, so that I can try to minimize it. And so, yes, I will probably be looking, and that will be the tone of how we look at things. But it also be how well do we manage that chunk? How do we manage that? How do we manage that?
So I think I'm understanding that like a 5% ending fund balance doesn't feel like enough to leave because that's the amount that's left over at the end of the year. And that doesn't feel like enough to have to get to the next year. So that's where the idea of 6% comes in. We still don't really love that, but 7% would be a lot more cuts right now. And so in order to spread out the devastation, was my word, right? In order to sort of spread that out a little, that's the thinking in going with 6% instead of 7%, because 7% would give us more money as a cushion next year, but it would mean a lot more cuts.
It would mean
now.
$2.5 million more. I'm not,
So am I understanding that right? Have I figured this out? Okay.
You are on the right line of thinking, yes. What is manageable this year? Next year, we'll be starting this conversation in September. And so that doesn't make it any easier. It just means we have more time to process what those worst cases might be.
So from the board at this particular time, you need us to give you our consensus of where we should be.
We're seeking your direction as to 5%, 7%, or 6%. 5, 6, or 7%. Let me do that chronologically. And we are recommending 6. We believe that that's manageable now. And if you chose 6 or 7 or 5, I'd still be trying to get as close to possible. I would like get as close to possible or supersede that. So I make no promise that we're going to hit that mark.
I walked in the building. It's really weird. I walked in the building tonight with 6% on my mind. So I would go with 6%. Director Caldwell. Okay. So are you abstaining? Okay.
Right. Nobody does.
Yeah.
Do you feel like 6% is what we should be saying? Given the not great choices that we have. Because really we want like 10%, right? But we don't want to have to make any cuts to get it. I mean, that's what we want, but that's not a thing.
I will agree with everyone about 6%.
So you have our consensus of 6%.
I have a question. So back in the day, Superintendent Banner, we used to have a number that was the number that we would lose if a student was not in a seat in school. So they're what we would get from the state, the feds, whatever that number was. I can remember one day it was $15,000 is what, if a kid was not there, we did not get that funding. I believe now, if I did my math, it's more like 20 something thousand. Is that, I know it's different for different students. Special needs students might get more reimbursement, but is there a number that we go by, an average of FTE for a student that, because when I do my math, when I looked at this chart, this enrollment chart, if this trend continues, and it looks like it is flattening out, but it looks like about 40 students would not be here next year, which doing my math, depending on the number, that's a significant amount of money. It's millions. So what do we have a number that we use now? That's
the per pupil allocation.
Yeah, the FTE for a student.
I don't have it off the top of my head. I was more nervous about all these numbers for you guys tonight.
Okay,
you can get it.
I can get it for you, no problem. But you're
I was
close.
just curious because if I use my number, it's a smaller number, but if I use the number from the math, it was a double that much, and that seems.
And
like
that's
a
something
lot.
we look at every year, regardless of the space that we're in. Like haven't been in this space. If your numbers go down, and that's why when you saw the chart and the conservative projections, we always want to project somewhere close to, but never over project, because if they come in under, we've already given those contracts for our teachers or all of our certificated staff. And then we have to make adjustments for our classified staff as well, if they're needed. And so, we always try to come in at that number. So if the number is projected low, then you're also looking in the same space of, okay, we're not going to need as many folks. So then we look at hopefully attrition takes care of that.
I also think that if I remember correctly, last time I went through a RIF, we were really challenged on hosting those smaller academically challenging classes, the AP US Histories, the Calculus, AB Calc. And so I could see some of those classes being very challenging to offer with 5 to 10 students in them when you've got a math class with 30. So I think that I mentioned this before, there are neighborhood meetings that go on. And with all of this happening, I really think it's important for the directors to get out into those neighborhood meetings now and to start talking about what's coming. So I think people are pretty clueless. My wife is one of them. Sorry, honey, wherever you are right now. But I was telling her about the budget stuff and she goes, no way, that's not happening. I'm like, it's happening. And more people need to know about it.
Yeah.
So
we will, we've been looking at that schedule for, June, but we'll work on getting you all that schedule and then also getting you talking points around this. Leanna, if you could take that note for us, that'd be great.
Can I just ask for the details on the one at the Camelot Apartments on Wednesday? I would love to be present and just listen.
We'll get that out to you.
Thank you.
And when we do receive next year's rates, because legislation just closed last week, so when we do that number.
Any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Concludes our reports for the evening. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
All right, moving on. The board is going to recess and move into executive session to meet informally with a staff member as they've chosen to exercise their right to meet with us under RCW 28A.405.230. We anticipate about 60 minutes before we return. Thank you. We have returned from executive session. Nothing more on the agenda. A motion to adjourn. Motion by Director Kim, second by Director Caldwell. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay for the baby goat.